Welcome to another episode of She Unleashed. She Unleashed is, of course, brought to you by Pumza Gyani, and I'm here to bring you the most amazing ladies from across the globe. Ladies who, like you, have started from maybe backgrounds where they were in a disadvantaged position, but they've gone up the career, the corporate ladder, and they're doing amazing things. Today, we're talking about a particularly important topic, especially for us women, because a lot of us are waking up to it right now. And it's a topic around personal branding. We almost tend to shy away from personal branding, and most feel that it is about, self glamorization. It is about putting ourselves there. It's about selling a wrong story. And far from it, because we have people who have really used personal branding to get into different environments they've never thought of before, to access opportunities that they would not have had they not worked on their personal brand. Today, I have an exciting speaker who is amazing at this topic of personal branding. She is coming from an ICT background. She's worked for the most amazing brands in the infrastructure space. She's worked for the Nokias, she's worked for Ericsson, and she is now head of sales for Meta. She is based in Europe, and she is serving the rest of EMEA. Jane, it's such an honor to have you here today. Welcome.
Thank you, Pumsa. I am finally excited and honored that I made it to your podcast. I've always looked forward to having this session with you.
Fantastic. And you've done it all, and we talk about it. And yet, the most amazing thing is, as I was looking through your profile and I was about to introduce you, I love how you've profiled yourself, that you don't profile yourself with just the roles. You've grown your brand into something that is just beyond. And I know there's a specific intention behind this. Tell me a little about Jane. Maybe let's start there. And how did she end up where she is today with Meta?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I did, like you mentioned, I did start a very technical career, very
Mhm.
career focused, then got into sales. But I think along the line, I also decided that I didn't want Jane and who I am, because I felt who I am is more than my job, my
Uh-huh.
career. Like if the career goes, like I don't have to work for this company or I choose not to work for this multinational and just stay at home. Who is Jane?
Mhm. Mhm.
And there's so much more to Jane. The
Mhm.
fact that I'm a mother, with my kids, married to an amazing husband, or by the fact that I'm very adventurous, love fun, want to explore and want to drive myself most times by challenges, or the fact that I'm passionate about young people, about women, or women in STEM, or young people that are coming from disadvantaged backgrounds, or the
Mhm.
fact that I want to share my story so that I can influence my community or those around me and inspire them. So there's so many parts of Jane, which I felt is more than my career and more than my job as a woman or an engineer or a woman working for a big multinational. I think that's when it occurred to me is that, I really want to bring my full self to the party. I
Mhm.
don't want to be defined totally by one part or aspect of my life. Because what would happen if that aspect should disappear? Because it
Mhm.
could. These things are in transitions as well. And what happens? Then who are you at the core? So that's why I had reintroduced myself to the world as the Jane I see. Not just the Jane, probably quite visible because of the career. Because most times the career path is very visible. I think until social media, most times people see you from that because you're maybe doing something for the company, representing the company, speaking
Mhm.
engagement. That career side tend to be more visible.
Mhm.
And it was only in celebrities and government officials you tend to see like the other side. Because then
Mhm.
traditional media will talk about, oh, this celebrity went there or did this, or traditional media will speak to maybe a government official that did something. But individuals didn't have to show that part
Yeah.
only to their closed community. But
Mhm.
now that we have social media, that tends to kind of infiltrate other parts of your life. uh, what you want to do about that? Do you want to own the narrative and decide this is the Jane you're seeing? Or do you want to leave it to chance?
Mhm.
But I think more importantly, do you want to use it as a tool? And I think that's why I think most of us should think about, because it becomes a tool. It's like figuring out all of a sudden you were making food without a knife because there was no, and somebody discovered the art of making knives and you get one, but you know it can be harmful if used wrongly.
Yeah.
But it can also be a wonderful tool in your kitchen to make delicious recipes if you use it well. So I have decided this is an amazing platform. It has commoditized media. Like, don't even people don't need advertising. Media doesn't have to be traditional way. For us individuals, what does it mean? Does it mean we leave it to chance and put out everything there or don't care about what we put out? Or can we use it as a tool to position our platforms and push for things that inspire us and things that could probably inspire others and help others? Now I'm giving you a long speech.
Absolutely. Look, I'm inspired by what you're saying. And I almost remember a story you always tell. You always tell us that you had an instance or incidents where you focus or relied on a corporate to brand you to an extent that when you left, people were still relating to you as Joy from Ericsson. And I think that's one of the turning points that you realize that actually you want a brand that is sustainable. You want people to know you about something that can be sustained beyond the corporate or the corporate that you would be working for at that time. And tell me, and I think you mentioning a very good conversation you're starting there with saying, in the past, we relied on journalists to say something about us. We relied on someone or the company being willing to put you as a face, to talk about the company. But right now, we have a total liberty to present ourselves exactly in what you're saying, owning your narrative. So tell me, when did you start and how did you go about doing this for yourself, Jane?
So I think the small steps that led to it. So like you said, there was an awareness, like, wow, I will see, like people save my name as Jane Erickson in their phones. Like these are people I thought, wow, I do have a surname. Like this is Jane, why is it? And they would actually initially I was quite happy with it, like, yeah, it's Jane Erickson. Maybe it was just easier to differentiate. But then as I grew my career, I remember I used to have conversations with my coach. And for my vision, I was relying on my company to take me there. You know how you have this big vision? You're like, okay, if I can do this in the company, climb, I'll get to where I'm going. But I did realize at some point that it doesn't look like it was going to do that. That alignment is not there because the company's got its own motivation, motives and agenda. And I got something slightly different, what I wanted to do. So how was I going to make that happen? And I wasn't given time for things I really wanted to do. So there was a realization that this isn't working. And my coach kept telling me, like, if this is your vision, why don't you feed it? Why don't you do things that feed the vision? It doesn't mean you stop your career. It's still a pillar of your life, but your life is bigger than that. So why don't you feed those elements you're passionate about? You want to mentor young women. You want to inspire, help the youth. Why don't you do something about it? Give time and energy and attention as well to it. And I think that's one of the parts I remember, okay, to do this, what does that mean? Which platform do I have to exist? Where do I have to be visible? So that's an element of it as well. Like, you know what? For the vision, for what I really want to achieve in life, which is way, way beyond my job, my 9 to 5 job, I need to give these things attention. And finally, also as a woman, a mother, I also wanted to introduce. I wanted to own my narrative for who I am. I'm an African woman working on the continent, working for multinationals in diverse environments, still with a family and kids. And I wanted to share that story with so many other people because I thought if they could relate to it, it could give somebody an inspiration to do something for themselves, to be better, to be challenged. And I wanted to do that badly. Your company wouldn't do that for you.
Absolutely.
That is for you to do. That is your desire. Nobody's going to take up that and try to do it for you. And I think those are some of the elements that trickled down and got me to the point. I'm like, you know what? I have to then own that narrative. It's what I want. There's no company going to do that for you. What is the incentive to do it for you? So I started to do something about it.
So tell me, and then what was the feedback as you were doing it? Because I'll tell you an interesting story. I've received a lot of feedback when I went out and started rebranding myself. And I think there's a natural inclination to feel like you're putting yourself too much out there. And you get all types of different feedback.
Even my spouse initially was like, "What?" Like people didn't get it, so it's always like people see the, like we say, you see the signs and the symptoms. You don't know what is driving it, and that's why it's so. I always tell people, don't try and be somebody else. You don't know what is driving. You don't know what is at the. Now I knew what is at the core was driving a lot of elements of what I was doing. So if you were only looking at the visible part, you weren't seeing the bigger picture. Ultimately, some people got it. So initially, people were like, "Oh my God, you're putting yourself out there too much." I was like, "Oh, do you want to become a politician?" Because people are trying to make sense of what they are seeing, and
Yeah.
others. Even I remember at some time my boss was like, "Oh, you and all this your women passionate project." I can't remember what we were. Oh yeah, and I was so so I saw an article on LinkedIn
Yeah.
last, and I was so proud because it was something I started in Ghana when I was managing the operations for Ericsson, and which was to sponsor the best female graduating student
Oh, wow.
in one of the schools. I thought we could do something about, inspiring our community. They were just next, there was a university. And I did it for about 3 years before I left. And I see they've continued it. So when I saw that article on LinkedIn, I'm like, yes, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I want to see. So just back to, I remember when I was having these conversations,
Yeah.
my boss would be like, because he couldn't see how that tied to our business objectives. And I do get it sometimes for people. Business is strictly business. For me, business is more than, there's also a social responsibility part, there's an economic responsibility part, and also your stakeholders. And I felt the communities were stakeholders. And I felt I was socially inclined to share value. I am a multinational tech company in this environment. How do I ensure that those in that environment, students, wherever they are, also get to feel our impact? And more importantly, because I was a woman, girls, because I knew that sector had a huge challenge with gender. So back to the story. So doing that felt to many people like, oh, to my boss, it was a pet project. To others, maybe I was just bored. I was looking for something to, get myself. So everybody was trying to understand in their own ways. And some people felt it was just a short phase. She just do this, then she get tired. So you get all that. So even my partner, I know he understood what I stood for, but I think sometimes he felt like, wow, isn't this too much? Because also we all have different energy levels. We want to, we our personalities demand that we express ourselves differently. And I was expressing myself in a way that plays to my strength, and not everybody would be comfortable doing that. So yes, you will get the initial resistance. Even some of my close friends, I know my husband would always tease me. So now we've done this. Are you going to be writing about it? Even my kids will be like, "Mom, are you going to be writing about this now? Are you going to be sharing?" Because they always realize that I reflect about, God, this is a good teachable mom. My child, make a good around them. Like now, she's going to write about it. So yes, you will get all of that. But I think with time, everybody got it. And especially those close to me, they would even encourage me. Hey, I think you should share about this. I think you should talk about this. I think you could join this project. I would like you to. And that was impressive because now these are the sometimes the naysayers. So you have those you can easily win over, and sometimes later on the naysayers are even jumping on the bandwagon and saying, "Hey, can you come and speak to this, or can you come and help this kids or help this woman?" So I think at the core, if you understand your core, that's what drives. With time, you'll be able to get others, not maybe not everyone, but you'll be able to get especially your close friends and supporters to see the bigger picture with you.
Did you always know what your personal brand was? Because I'll tell you why. I think as we grow up through the corporate ladder, we almost tend to affiliate our brand with the corporate brand, and we want to be relevant within the corporate context. Did you always know that I want to be more than just a corporate executive? I want to be known as an African leader, and all of the things that you mentioned that are beautiful, did you have to find time to refine the brand that we are seeing as Jane today?
I'll just tell a story. The first session I had with my coach in 2014, I don't know what she asked me about. What do I really want to do? And I told her, and she said, "Why don't you do it?" I said, "Because I've been running away from it. Because of all I thought it would bring along." So at that point, I knew, but I didn't want to do it. Because, like all those things, who wants extra stress? Like, it's
Yeah.
easier being a mom, a housewife, doing your career, and just being cool with being you.
Yeah.
I felt this part was like, oh, it comes with all this extra. Like, who needs all the extra? I'm okay. I don't need that. But as a young girl, I probably didn't know this is what I wanted to, this is the brand I wanted to stand for. But I was always drawn to some things. So that's an indication. There's some things I was always drawn to. So the fact that I never got a chance to, or I felt when I made the choice to study engineering, so many people were against it because of my gender. It made it a passion for me to speak about it while I was in school. So I remember then in school, I was part of a body, IEEE, Institute of Electrical Electronics Engineering. We started up a women's version of it in Nigeria. And we would go speak to young girls in secondary schools just to disabuse their minds that, hey, this is me studying engineering. It's not hard. Don't believe all those things. It's got nothing to do with your gender or got to do with your strength. It's got to do with this. Do you want to solve problems? Do you want to challenge your mind? So I would do that. I wasn't being paid. I was just a volunteer. Nobody was paying me. But just the fact that someone said, don't do this, and I found out they were wrong, I'm like, I'm telling everybody they were wrong. It's entirely wrong. So I think there's some things you're drawn to naturally, and they start to build up. So even while I was in the full-fledged focus in just my career alone, I knew internally in my organizations, I was always drawn to things like that. I was willing to, when I see women are challenged, I'm like, hey guys, why are you challenged? Like, you could do this. Why don't you go for that role? And I go, we can. Okay, you know what? I'll tell you guys how I do it. So I'll set up a session, a video call, and invite everybody. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to invite one of the senior executives. This is what I normally do when I meet with them. So you can ask them any questions. I'm giving you tips and tricks. Like I was always drawn. Nobody was paying me for this. It wasn't a part of it wasn't a part of my job. It was just me being, seeing a lot of females in the organization being challenged because a lot of them were not staying. When they get to that childbearing age or they get married, I see them leaving. And when you have these conversations all about the environment and climbing the ladder, I'm like, no way. I'm going to, like, let's do this. You wanted to rally around just the same thing, like people telling you couldn't study engineering. So that was something I was also drawn to. The same thing with interns. I would find that interns in the office were ignored. People just wanted to give them a boring task and let them, not challenge them. And I'd be like, why are these interns lying around? They should be challenged. Why? Then I gather them all around and say, hey, now you know what? I'm going to give each of you a topic. You go 1 week researching it. You're coming to this boardroom at the end of the week and you present. You got each 10 minutes. You tell me, and I would do that. And when they came back, oh, we don't know who, where we can get coaching or level. Like, you know what? I know the organization. I will look for people, ask them to volunteer to support you. And on the day you present, they will show up and listen and be sure. I was doing that. Nobody was paying me. It wasn't my job. It was just you're naturally drawn to some things. And I think that's why it's good to pay attention to yourself as well. You pay attention to yourself. What is something you would do for free? You're passionate about, your vocal. What is that gap you're trying to solve? Sometimes that is always drawn to something driving you at the core. So when I was having that conversation with the lady in 2014, I already knew. But at that time, I stepped back. I had a personal, some personal stuff in my life that I was battling with. So I had a very good friend, and we used to do this together. It's like you have a support system. Then I lost her. I lost her in like, I don't know, 2008.
Sure.
And it was a very sudden incident. She was young. She just had a baby. I never saw it coming. So just a part of me felt just shrink and hide. I don't want to be this bigger person. I don't want to be any of that. I just want to live a quiet life. Is this all
Wow.
we just live this life? And I was grieving. So for a long time, I didn't want anything to do with the Jane I knew. So I know when I had that conversation in 2014 with the lady, I was being very sincere to her that I had gone through so much pain grieving with my friend. I felt it was unfair to
To
be
continue
recast.
as if nothing happened. Eh?
This is so unfortunate. Why
Yeah.
shouldn't she be here? This is something we were both passionate about. Why would I have to do it without her? There's so many things I was processing, but it occurred to me that I think the best gift I could have given her was to see that long after she's gone, those things we were passionate about still existed.
Absolutely.
So I think in some ways there are parts of it you're aware, maybe not all, because I believe we evolve, and as you evolve, you start to crystallize and articulate it. So in lots of ways in the beginning, I couldn't really articulate it. I just knew I was drawn to some things naturally. But as I became more aware of myself, I became more comfortable, being aware of my strengths, my talents, I started to articulate what it was all about for me.
And I like how simplistic you're making it because people keep on asking. People say, I don't know what my brand is. And they think about the process that they would have to follow in order to discover what their brand is. And you're making it simple. You're saying it's something that you've always wanted to do. It's some things that you are drawn to. It's things that you feel strongly about, you want to talk about. And these come natural. You don't have to be paid to do them, but these things are what you naturally gravitate towards. I mean, if you come into a room, you're the first one to notice there are women, there are girls. You are the first one at work to see there are girls and they're not doing much. And it's those things, it's having those conversations in our head that what am I drawn to? And I love that you're saying over time, then you crystallize it and it can evolve and it dependent on what you get exposed to. It can be much more crystal as you're evolving. Tell me, because I also have a memory where I particularly knew I was drawn to women and I wanted to be in a position to empower women, to open access to women. But exactly what you're saying, sometimes the environments we in are not necessarily conducive, or they're not speaking to, what our vision for ourselves is or what our brand is saying, or you just frowned upon when you like start talking a lot about women. How do you find yourself navigating in these spaces? Because I think sometimes we don't leave the brand because maybe we're challenged with how we can create the impact because of maybe the restrictions of where we're finding ourselves in. How do you navigate yourself around this?
So one of the ways I do that, I'll speak to the story I was telling about, the best graduating student. I look for alignment. Sometimes it's just a small alignment. And in that case, it was because I found that the company decided now had a diversity goal. And they decide the pillars of diversity and they set a goal for themselves. And they were willing to allocate a certain amount of funds to it. But just like in all these things, you can have these big goals if you don't actually implement it. So I found out what was missing. Nobody was doing anything about it. And it could be because people were not passionate. They didn't see it as, people were more focused on the business objective, strictly based on revenue. And so even though we set this goal, we weren't doing anything about it. Because it was something I was passionate about, it was easy for me to do something about it. And I told myself, why don't I? If we have these funds and nobody was willing to use it, next door are students. And in those students, we have lots of women. They're probably trying to figure out how is it going to be in the actual industry if I have to work in tech. So it was easy for me because I found that sweet alignment to use it. Of course, there were some other things I would have loved to do, it wouldn't have worked. So, for example, one of the things I used to work because the company was also willing to International Women's Day celebrated, I used to leverage it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Gather all the students, all the female students from all the universities around to the office and really have a proper session. Because normally we will celebrate with ourselves. And I'm like, why are we celebrating alone? This is a good opportunity to bring those girls to come see how it is if they have to, work in the industry. It's like you're trying to attract them as well to see how it is, to have a feel, to feel comfortable that there are people like them here. So you're looking for those sweet spots. And you're not going to get it every time. So it's not every time you want to do that speaking engagement, you will be chanced to because your work would override it. So look for the quick wins. And I think that's how you start. And with time, I learned to differentiate both aspects. Like I told you, my 9 to 5 is my job. I will do my work. I will be respectable and responsible with my work. Weekends are my time. After work are my time. If I have things I'm passionate about, that's a good way to use that time to fully represent other aspects of me. So what I started doing is, some of the things I'm passionate about, you will see me take them on over the weekends. I know it's quite a lot of time, but I used to take them on over the weekends when I'm on holidays. Like I literally would take a break, and people would think she took a break because she's going to some vacation somewhere. I took a break because I have a speaking engagement. I'm going to this school or that school. These are things that give me energy. They drive me. So when I say, oh, I spent my birthday going to this school and that school and giving a speaking engagement. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. That's how you spent your birthday. So I was also looking for ways to express other parts of me. So what I would say is that if you give it a priority, you'll find time. Because in the beginning, I always said I was busy. I told everybody in the world, oh, I couldn't do it. My coach was like, oh, what are you doing about your goal? I'm like, oh, I'm too busy. Like the job, I'm traveling around. Then I started finding ways to blend it. So I started a non-profit, Women and Career. And do you know that I would go on business trips? And even when I do the business meetings, when I see interesting women with good career stories, I will tell them, can you spend an hour of your time to speak to other women? We'll do a video interview. We can do it informally in the evenings, and that is how I started pulling all the stories and sharing with other women. I didn't have to do any extra thing. Just when I go on these business trips, I meet clients or I meet people. I thought I had interesting stories. I wanted to share it with other women. So I think once you start to, give something priority, you kind of start to find opportunities. Initially, it's difficult, but with time, you start to. The same thing with writing. I always said, I was too busy. I couldn't write. There was no time. I'm tired. I'm a mom. I'm this. And like I gave all the right excuses and just took writing once and seeing the response from people like, oh my gosh, thank you for sharing. This is so. When I got that response, I'm like, wow, maybe I should share more. So I started finding time to write. And for me, being very busy, it's just snippets of time. Wake up in the morning after my quiet time and all, I just give like 10, 20 minutes. I just write what I could. I come back from work late in the evening, I'm done with everything. I give another 20, 30 minutes. Sometimes you see me jogging with a phone, taking voice notes. Then I later translate the voice notes. So I was using also, some of the time because it became a priority that I wanted. If people found this very beneficial, how can I find ways to share with them? So yeah, I'll say start with the small, quick wins. Look for if it's an organization you are, where are the overlaps? It doesn't have to come immediately. With time you find out, okay, the company wants this and I want that. How can I do something that benefits all parties?
And I loved what you are talking about now because you're also talking about the areas or the platforms where you communicate your brand. I know you're doing a lot. I met you through the videos you were starting to do, which were almost like every day. And I was like, Jane, where do you get the time for the makeup for all of these videos? And you do it with so much ease. What are the other platforms? Because you mentioned LinkedIn. You've mentioned that you're doing a lot of things, and I don't want to rob the ladies of just how vast a persona you are, because I've met you in different platforms. You are an author. You speak in different platforms across technology. But one thing you also taught me was you wanted to make your personal brand wide enough so that it does not create you or limit you to be just an expert within the technology space, but to be known as the leader across the board. And you were intentional about that because at some point you found that it was much more restrictive and limiting you because of all the experience you've had in telecoms, in infrastructure. It sort of communicated a message that your next role should be in technology. But you were intentional. You started making moves of making yourself a persona beyond technology. Tell me about this journey and what has it opened? What doors has it opened for you?
So, like, I love the word you use, intentionality, because if you're not intentional and leave things to chance, which is all about the branding, is like owning your narrative,
Uh-huh.
then whatever outcome you get, I think you should be fine with it because you were okay with any outcome. So intentionality means really looking at results and looking at also the process you use. Now, like you said, I had different. So one of the things I always say, play to your strengths. I don't believe in doing things that don't play to your strength because then it looks like hard work. The things I did because those were my strengths. It was easy for me to whip out a video because it just means in the morning before I go to work, I would do makeup, isn't it? And I'm like, I do makeup. I've got 15 minutes. I can say something in 15 minutes. Why don't I share something I've been reading, thinking about, or working on? So in 15 minutes, I put up a phone, I can do that because that's my strength. I can have a conversation without having to be nervous about it, or have an audience right in front of me. I can have that conversation. So I was playing to that strength. So for other people, it could be different strengths, and there are different ways you can do it. But one key thing, play to your strength, it makes it easier. If you're someone that loves to write, that could be a good platform as well. Because for some people, writing comes so natural. They wake up in
Yep.
the morning, they write, or they're always writing. For some people, it's presenting. You could tell in your office, you're always the go-to for presentation. When nobody wants to do it, you're willing to, okay, I'll present. So those could be avenues for you to deliver your message or create that visible part of your brand. If it's writing, if it's doing videos, if it so look for what really speaks to your strength. I would say don't do what somebody else is doing because you see them doing. Look for the best way for you to achieve it without having to strain yourself. So that's one thing I would say. So in terms of intentionality, because I have decided this is what I'm trying to, this is what I'm aiming for. I'm a leader on the continent. I'm not just a woman in tech. I became quite intentional. So it's so easy because you've seen me speak in women forums talking about gender issues to always say, oh, whenever there's a gender issue, let's call her. So I decided I'm going to change that narrative because there's more to me than just talking about gender issues. So one way about being intentional is that normally when I write, then I'll write about other aspects of me that I think you know and you should know. So if I wanted to position the business part, which I do a lot, I would talk a lot about business leadership, those aspects to give you a preview that Jane is not all about gender and gender issues. Jane is also about business leadership on the continent. And you see from the content I put out there or the engagements I speak in. So it could mean that if I do have opportunity to speak, I could decide for now I'd rather take the business engagement because that's what I want to be intentional about. I want to change. I don't want that narrative that all I do is talk about gender issues. So those are ways you can be intentional in terms of um, the way the information itself is the way you put out the information. You can decide. You have control over the topics. Let me put it that way. You know, and even over the forums you do it. So you can be intentional. Okay, I want to speak at a business forum. I want to write this article for a business forum. I'm not going to write it for this platform. I'm writing it for this platform. And talking about platforms, there are various platforms. So even starting from your office, that's a good platform. That's a good place to start. Like I said, you could be informally among a group in your office or formally in a group in your office where you're giving and people are given opportunity to showcase something, and you volunteer to do that. That's a good way to start. It could be conferences. Sometimes conferences are looking for people to sit on panels or speak to a topic. That's another good way. But it could also you creating your own content. It could be video, it could be audio, it could be writing. That's another good way to start. And you could start from areas you're very comfortable sharing, because sometimes when you're starting, you're not too sure where to start. Then you can go to areas that are really, really for you. They're deeper and require more a deeper engagement to share. So those are all the kinds of ways. But for platforms, these are ways you can do it. Social media has made it quite easy. That's why I keep mentioning social media, because you can still use traditional media. Because I used to actually contribute to the Financial Times in Ghana when I was there. That was a traditional media. And I did that by just seeing a post on LinkedIn saying, hey, we're looking for people to contribute to this column of our newspaper. Anybody interested, ping me. And I pinged them. I'm like, interested. I'm willing to contribute. And at the time I did it, I'm like, what are you thinking? Where will we have the time to share it? So you can do traditional media, because some people might prefer that. So if you want to do newspapers, or sometimes even radios, these are some traditional media, journals, magazines. It could be professional journals, professional magazines. And then you can decide to do social media, which is also quite easy, because there you can literally use your platform, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever platform you feel you're best comfortable starting with. So those are YouTube. If you're into videos, you could do Clubhouse if you're into audio. Because some people are more comfortable with sharing with their voice alone. They don't want people, say.
Yeah.
And a place like a Clubhouse would be good for you. And others are more interested not to share their face or anything about them. They even want to write with a pen name. And maybe writing is for you. So those are some of the areas you can use.
What are the fallacies that women have about personal branding, Jane? And I'm asking this because I think there's a view that before you put yourself out there, people aspire to be perfect. They want to be perfect before my voice is heard. And I think what you just said is, for me, it's not about the perfection. It's about your lens, how you see life, my context, my voice, and you almost find that women they underestimate that, because you may be finding yourself in a space of technology, but you are a unique person who will appeal to a different audience, background, and different people who resonate with your message. And as you're building up, the knowledge and the excellence in your field, you're already starting from a position of march, because you have your own lens which resonates with specific people. What are you finding as what people maybe mention as challenges from going out there and fully brand themselves?
So you're actually right about perfection being one, because most women, even I see that in men, want it to be perfect. Uh, Almost like an imposter syndrome. Why do I feel I'm an expert? And I do feel like that the first time you put a pen to paper. But then you ask yourself, why are you doing it? And just the bare reason that you're just sharing your opinion. So that growth mindset of owning that I'm learning and I'm sharing my perspective. It's not all the time you're saying you're an expert in the field. You're sharing your perspective. I think it takes away that pressure to feel like I have to be perfect or be an expert. And it gives room for a conversation with your audience, because you're drawing your audience in and they can also share their perspective. And second thing I also see a lot is people being very uncomfortable with the result of branded. Sometimes it is visibility. That's one of the outcomes. You become quite visible. Because if you speak about something, people are engaging with you, there's some kind of visibility that comes with it. You're out there, you're putting yourself out there. And I think lots of women are uncomfortable with it. Maybe it's the notion that they don't want to be seen
Mm-hmm.
because they are very comfortable not being seen.
Mm.
Because people, maybe if you're seen, you'll be further scrutinized. I don't know, but there's this notion of I don't want to be seen.
Mm.
And normally when I, meet or engage with such people, what I normally say is, okay, it's okay you don't want to be seen, but can we flip it? Rather than saying you don't want to be seen, what are you passionate about you would like to share with others?
Mm.
Do
Mm.
you want people to learn? Or where do you feel like this is something I would like to help you with, that information I have? And I think maybe sharing it with you could actually help you. Maybe not to make my mistakes, or maybe to know better and be more equipped. Now, if
Mm-hmm.
you go with that frame of mind, that is not the reason. You're not doing this for visibility. All this feel is false advertisement. Like you're putting yourself and packaging yourself, and it's not really who you are. And that could also be a restriction. Like, no, 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 I don't want to give people the impression I'm this. I'm like, you know, you have to have the right frame and perspective. It is false advertisement if it's not authentic, if it's not really who you are. I would not show up someone you could tell by reading my articles. You can almost say, oh, this is how Jane comes out. It is false if I'm trying to project someone that I'm not,
Mm-hmm.
or be someone I'm not. And then it's also hard work for me, by the way, because that takes quite a lot to be who you're not. So I rather show up. That's why I say always play to your strength. The things I'm comfortable doing. There's some things I know. Nice, I admire you doing it, but I don't know if I can do a podcast right now. Like I don't think I have that kind of a, right now. No, 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 I'm fine doing the short videos. I'm okay, but go ahead, do it. This
Mm-hmm.
one, this is more like me. So if I look at, so a key thing is the right framing, framing it right. It can be some of the baggage we've carried. You know how women have always been told, oh, women are all trying to be noticed and don't be noticed. You should be known for only your work. And we just keep our head down and only want to do our work.
Mm-hmm.
But in our day and age, it's more than just doing your work, you know?
The funny thing that's coming to my mind as you're talking is it's amazing how LinkedIn has become such a great equalizer. You're in sales, you know how, in the teams, you know how women would, approach things in terms of personal branding. The boys would be in every space. They're
Oh,
close to
they
the
don't even
top
have to
level.
know what you're talking about. They have an opinion.
You know what I'm saying?
They're
And
comfortable sharing their opinion, no matter how crazy it could be.
absolutely, and can reach any office of decision making. And they are so ready to brand themselves, whatever they call, they're the best things. They remember this is the deal that they've signed, and so on. And they're so overt with their achievements. I just find LinkedIn such a great equalizer because I mean, there are many people who have done it. It's like, okay, so if you write that and then it's so what? But it's also given women a voice, a non-intimidating platform for you to state, this is who I am and this is what I'm about. And I find it such a tool that we can really use for growth in the careers and in different environment. Would you say the same? Because I don't see necessarily, I find it's equal. It's not necessarily that there's a lot more guys than women. I see women coming up.
Oh no, it's equal. I agree with you. I definitely, because think about it, in the office environment, in most sectors, women are not in the C-suites or way up in the boards, or very few in leadership. But those kind of platforms to speak and share their voice is mostly leadership. They're the ones leading the meeting and speaking out the whatever. So it's always mostly, few women doing that. So chances are every woman will have an opportunity to share her opinion. Doesn't If you don't have the guts to raise your hand and ask a question during that conference or meeting, nobody's going to hear your voice.
Uh-huh,
And
uh-huh.
there might be few of you, or especially in my sector, sitting on that podium talking. There will be very few women. With places like LinkedIn, democratizing, it's more like, everybody, if you want to share your opinion, like, Nobody's going to say, "Oh, you're not leadership. Why are you going to share your opinion?" Or,
Mm-hmm.
you shouldn't be giving a speech. You're not part of the board or part of the CC. There's no title tied to it.
Mm-hmm.
You can even be the first day at a job and you want to give your opinion on how you feel about the job. It's okay. So it's created a level playing field, which I feel women can leverage because for a long time, sometimes that office environment hasn't made it easier for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It hasn't made it easier for us to giving you those tools to really share your voice. Now you've got a platform that is giving you the tools, and companies are taking it serious. Most companies are seeing it. I know a lot of time companies are even expecting it of their leaders,
Mm-hmm.
not just to be a leader within, but externally show thought leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Women can leverage that because even though you don't have a chance in your organization to do that presentation or give that speech or sit at that conference or go for that meeting or if nobody's giving you that chance, LinkedIn is giving you the chance.
Mm-hmm.
So come and give us your version of it. Come and share your own perspective of it. And if the office is not willing to take notice, a larger audience is willing to listen.
Absolutely. And it's so amazing how it's developed such a sisterhood. Sometimes I think in the forums of our boardrooms, your opinion is sometimes validated by a man or someone else, stepping up and confirming that or validating what you're saying. And the platform LinkedIn is so nice because you have an ecosystem of sisters who are just so ready to root for you and, just say, affirm you and just say, Jane,
I
good
love
going.
this.
I love that video, which is so good because it's really, it's about the visibility of your
I
brand
love
and
that. I love that because it feels so awkward to like give a whole presentation and nobody says anything, and you share that same content in LinkedIn and you get so many comments, and you wonder what was different. Like nobody even acknowledged what I just said when I did that presentation. Now I share it as an article, and everybody like it's so much. So I think it's a good tool for women. It could also be a place for you to test and get to fully understand what is working for your brand or what is working for you, or even the audience you're speaking to or the audience you best speak to.
Mhm. And I think the greatest thing is you also find communities of people who are doing maybe something similar, which then enhances your personal brand. I mean, the moment you speak there talking about women, there are many other women who then, like you saying, inviting you to different platforms so that your brand can develop breadth and, strength. Now, tell me, what is the next for Jane? Because I know you are up to so many things. You have a book, and we have not even started talking about the book as also an avenue for which you have also extended your brand in and spoken about your brand. What is the next for Jane? Because there's just no stopping you.
There's really no stopping me. See? Yes, you're actually right. I'm very grateful because I haven't since taking my new role. I had to come to Europe because I've always lived on the continent, and it's really created a big opening for me. Working for Meta, and I'm like, wow, like I should seek to have a wider platform because when you have a wider platform, you can share with more. So that's the next. I don't know in what form it will come, but I know that I seek for a wider platform because I've realized, it's okay to share with, to your community. And I found out that the more your platform is wider, you have a larger audience, you can even help or support. And you tend to see that in all you do. Like when I was, you know, in my own little community, I was really keen about influencing my own little community. As the platform grew wider, I saw other opportunities to influence and support others. So a good example is ever since taking my role at Meta, I've been so passionate about my continent and even my region. So the region I manage is Middle East and Africa because I'm seeing sometimes the misrepresentation, the nuances that others are not considering, and you decide to be a voice, to say, no, no, I'll be a voice. Like, we don't have to do things the way you do things for it to be perfect. We're different, but in our own uniqueness is a gold mine. Have you known this and this about us? This is all we are. A lot, much more than just maybe the color of our skin or our religion, or it is so much more about this region. Even in the way we do business, even in the way we lead. By leading that way, it doesn't come across to you as the same because your frame of reference is different, but it's still beautiful and it's still achieving great results. So that's why I thought, for example, the platform becomes bigger. Your desire and your need to support gives you a bigger perspective. So, example, a week ago, was it a week ago? I did have a session with investors in the region, Middle East and Africa. And that's because since taking that role, that's been the big passion of mine. How can I promote economic activity in this region? So now not just Africa, but Middle East and Africa. And how can I show the world a bit about this region? Because it's so diverse, in depth. It's not just one country. Think about Africa. There are 54 countries. The Middle East is just not one country. There are 19 countries with different ethnicities. They're very, industrious people, the entrepreneurs, even the women in this country, not just religion about them, they're very entrepreneurial and no aspects about them, the youth. So it's become a passion. And I was able to roll a project using writing on my company's platform for the region, which I did last. And to see that we're using that to support a lot of startups and small businesses, it gladdens my heart. It makes me happy to see the influence of that. But I think if I never really had this platform, I wouldn't have thought that way. You
Yeah.
know, I wouldn't have thought about, oh, how can I think about a wider ecosystem? Because now I'm thinking beyond gender. I'm thinking about actually creating an environment where these big multinationals come to these regions and support to promote economic activity. That is a longer sustainability play than something transactional. Than going, I'm not saying it's not good to go and do this charity work like build a hospital, but they're still good.
Yeah.
But sometimes they're just like short-term reliefs. When you promote economic activity, people are empowered themselves to grow and start their businesses and run it for generations and improve their economy, improve their well-being. There's so much more that would happen for them. So I feel that is more sustainable. You know,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
as the platform gets bigger, even your perspective and how you bring you bring yourself and how you show support changes. So that's where my headspace is now. Like, okay, girl, if we can do this, you can think of all the opportunities that can also present itself for you to really support and do more if the platform is bigger. I don't know in what shape or form it will show up, but yeah, I'm putting it out to the universe.
Absolutely. I think before we started the show, we said, to whom much is given, much is expected. And I think you truly live that. You say, as the pie becomes bigger, that's when you are also moved, to do more, with what you have. And I love that you are living fully on your brand. You are living your personal brand. It's about Africa. It's about, I think even going beyond women now, saying Africa, what
Yes.
what can we do for Africa? Jane, it's been amazing to have you on the show. And I know we took a pact when we started, and I hope we will live to that pact, that we want to see much more impact, and we are really set on driving initiatives that will create a change. I think what is becoming evident in Africa is that citizens and people like you and me are going to make the change. It's not just going to be waiting on things to happen, but women with strong personal brands like you do, and who are
Yeah.
set on living those personal brands, will make the change. Thank you so much for coming on board and sharing your experience. And where else can people find you? I know you're on LinkedIn. Where can they find you if they want to listen to the, this insights, the early morning insights that you share.
Thank you so much. So I'm definitely on most of the social media platforms. Jane Egerton-Idehen. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I also have a book, Be Fearless, Give Yourself Permission to Be You. It's on Amazon and some of the local bookstores. And currently, my big passion is promoting a book drive. That's this year. That's one of the big things I am doing, because I'm trying to upgrade a library in
Mhm.
an impoverished part of town where I used to live in Nigeria. So I've decided to also reach out and give people the opportunity to support that drive. So if you have used books that are still in good condition, you want to give out, hey, reach out to me. We will be happy to take them. We would use them and upgrade that library. So yeah, that's all the places you can reach me.
So you're coming to South Africa soon on the
Oh
17th of May. So let
yes,
no one be discouraged from South Africa that they can't share the books with you and you're far away.
I'll come
Let's
out with the books.
Absolutely. So if you have an interest of sharing and contributing to Jane's Drive, please do reach out to me. I am available on She Unleashed, or you can drop me a link on email or drop me an update on my LinkedIn page. And also herself, do let her know that you have some books that you'd like to share, and we can arrange that. Jane, it's been a wonder and it's been amazing to share this moment with you, but also really to have your brand so visible to us and speaking to us, and really in action now with the drive. We can see the brand in action. Thank you so much. And I look forward to having the next session and you sharing your next adventures with me in the next
Thank
session.
you, Professor. I really, when we have these conversations, it's two-way. I also get really inspired and motivated just chatting with you. But thank you for sharing this platform with me as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jane. And it's a wrap. Cheers.